Faith in itself is a powerful force, but in this specific place, the convergence of hundreds of fervent hearts, praying together, reached a point of spiritual saturation where the impossible seemed to become visible and tangible. If you have ever felt alone in your search for signs or hope, prepare to be taken to a place where the very landscape surrendered to a divine presence, elevating the souls of all present to a level of peace and certainty never before felt, transforming the climb of a simple hill into a journey that would change their lives forever. What exactly did they see at the top, in the shadow of that large 8.56-meter concrete cross? Something that made the crowd stop in absolute silence. Before we delve into the unbelievable details of this profound narrative of faith, if you know someone who desperately needs this hope and the light of Christ in their life, write their name and relationship to you in the comments right now, as we will add all these names to our main prayer, using the rosary, asking for the intercession of Our Lady. The story begins in this small, hidden town, which became a beacon of hope, especially at the foot of the famous Mount Sipovac, known as Mount of the Cross. This is not an easily accessible place, and the climb itself represents an act of penance and focus. Pilgrims of all ages and social classes came driven by a thirst for something more, a spiritual certainty that the ordinary world could not offer. What made this event special was not the presence of a single figure, but rather the overwhelming volume of believers who, side by side, barefoot or weary, began the steep journey. It was possible to feel the unity of the community through the constant murmur of prayers that rose with them. The devotion there was not silent. It was a loud song composed of thousands of supplications and thanksgivings, which mingled with the sound of footsteps on the loose stone. From the first meter of ascent, the atmosphere became sacred, showing that the preparation of the heart for the divine encounter was already in full swing, even before they reached that highest point where the 8.56-meter cross rose against the sky, promising a vision or a peace that was worth all the effort. The ascent of Mount Cross is meticulously punctuated by 14 wooden crosses, each representing a station of the cross, transforming the physical journey into an intense and painful, but profoundly rewarding spiritual path. On this special day, the crowd not only walked, but crawled at certain points, kneeling on the stones to meditate on the final moments of Jesus. The synchronicity of suffering was remarkable. At each station, the volume of prayer rose, then subsided for a moment of introspective reflection. This collective way of the cross was not merely a tradition followed, but an intense purification, an active preparation for what they hoped to find at the summit. Not only the sight of the great cross, but a confirmation of their faith. Physical exhaustion served as a constant reminder of human frailty, and the determination to press on was a testament to the unwavering strength of their belief. Each stop served to empty the ego and fill the spirit, preparing the faithful for something extraordinary that the history of that mountain promised. Upon reaching the top, the pilgrims did not disperse. They gathered around the enormous concrete cross, forming a dense and cohesive human circle of prayer. It was a sea of upright faces, some bathed in silent tears, others with smiles of pure exhaustion and joy. The main sound now was not that of footsteps, but the incessant and powerful recitation of the rosary. Prayers multiplied in different languages, but converged on a single intention, creating a kind of spiritual energy field. At that point, the small town, the world's problems, everything seemed minuscule. The only reality was that mountain and the shared faith. The atmosphere was one of such devotion that even the most skeptical hearts present were touched by the sincerity and strength of that kneeling multitude. They had fulfilled the penance of the ascent, and now awaited, in humility, for heaven to respond to their union of faith, with the living body of the Church in total harmony. It was at this height of fervor, while the last beads of the rosary were being fervently prayed, that the unsurpassed event occurred that solidified the spiritual fame of Mount of the Cross. There was no thunderous noise or a voice descending from the heavens. Instead, there was an absolute and inexplicable silence that fell upon the crowd, abruptly interrupting the prayers. What the faithful witnessed was not a phenomenon easily described in scientific terms, but it was undeniably a collective testimony of a divine presence. Testimonies spoke of a sudden change in the light, of an intense peace that enveloped everyone, or even the physical sensation of being embraced by an invisible force. It seemed that, at that exact moment of perfect communion and surrender, the veil between the natural and the supernatural had become thin. The most impactful thing was that the testimony was not isolated. Hundreds of people, gazing at the same point or at the sky, experienced the same overwhelming sensation that Christ and Our Lady were, in some ineffable way, manifesting their presence there, in direct response to that immense faith, consolidated in the effort of the Stations of the Cross. The impact of this collective experience of divine presence was immediate and transformative. Many people who climbed the mountain with immense weights on their shoulders descended relieved, not because they had prayed, but because they had witnessed the effectiveness of prayer in unison. The faith that was once only belief was now absolute certainty. Countless expressions of weeping were seen, tears of profound joy, of spontaneous conversion, and of liberation from old grievances and guilt. Hope was no longer a possibility. It was a palpable fact engraved in the memory of that multitude. This divine presence seemed to have touched the core of their souls, instilling a renewal of vows and a love for Christ and His Mother that surpassed any worldly understanding. They knew they had experienced something sacred and unique. The peace that enveloped the hill was so intense that it was carried back down by the crowd, spreading like an invisible wave throughout the small town, reaffirming the purpose of all the sacrifice and God's true ability to manifest Himself in the midst of His faithful children. The journey and what was witnessed on Mount Cross were not just a one-day event. They became a legacy, living proof that sincere devotion and penitential effort can move mountains, both those of stone and the spiritual ones within us. The pilgrims descended knowing they had been marked by that grace. The miracle was not only in what they possibly saw, but in what changed within their hearts. They returned to the world with a new vision of how to face daily difficulties, with the certainty that fervent prayer is heard and that the communion of faith multiplies the divine presence. That silence at the summit, that unforgettable light or peace, became the beacon guiding their lives, making everyone understand that, no matter where they are or how difficult their climb might be, they carried with them the strength of that Mount of the Cross and the love of Christ and the Virgin Mary. Their testimony became the most powerful preaching. The event of faith on the slopes of Kruisevac, where mass devotion attracted divine peace, should make us reflect deeply on how we conduct our own daily journey. What the multitude experienced on that intense climb is exactly what we are called to seek in our ordinary lives, each dawn. We don't need a physical mountain to perform the Stations of the Cross. We need to climb the Mount of the Cross every day through constant forgiveness, the conscious choice of peace instead of conflict, and the opening of our hearts to conversion and love. Daily prayer, made with the same fervor and focus as those pilgrims, is what connects us to that unsurpassable presence. Often we expect great, visible miracles, but the greatest grace is perseverance in faith, the ability to find peace in a chaotic world. If we dedicate ourselves to this kind of life, seeking faith and forgiveness, we will be building our own dwelling place for the manifestation of the divine, ensuring that the love of Christ floods and renews us. To bring this peace to those you love, please write in the comments the names of other relatives and friends who need to be added to our prayer list with the main rosary. We hope that the description of this unsurpassed event on Mount Cross has ignited in your heart the desire for a deeper and more united faith. This testimony of communion shows the power of when the faith of many unites in one intention, opening the heavens to receive grace. We would very much like to know, what do you think this kind of testimony of peace and divine presence means for the Church today? How can the pursuit of this more intense faith, exemplified in the ascent of that mountain, impact your daily actions? Leave your comment on this topic below and share this message of hope and devotion with those who need renewed encouragement to pray. Your participation strengthens our faith community. Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey. If you were touched by the narrative and want to receive more stories that inspire and uplift faith, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos. May the peace of Christ and the love of Our Lady be with you today and always. Until the next journey.